Morning and welcome to the Government Information Center. My name is Chevron Deal and I'm your host for today, and I'm here to drive a conversation that impacts nationally. You too can join in this conversation by simply following us on social media. For Facebook, it's Ministry of Information and Communication Technology, and for YouTube, it's MICT Namibia. Please make sure that you join this impactful conversation with us. Today we discuss the operations and progress of the of the Namibia Petroleum Corporation of Namibia, namely or fondly known as Namcor. I'm now joined by Mr. Epson Wanguta, the Interim Managing Director of Namcor. Good morning and very warm welcome to the GIC. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Twafi, and good morning to the listeners as well.
Thank you. Before we dive into our discussion, I would just like you to tell us, or to elaborate rather, on Namcor's turnaround plan.
So maybe thank you very much, Twafi, for organizing this setup. I think it's good for us as companies, state-owned enterprises, to share with the nation what we do, and because the nation, at the end of the day, they are the owners of these state-owned enterprises. State-owned enterprises are not owned by the board or by the management or by the Lion Ministry. State-owned enterprises are owned by the Namibian people. And I think this kind of platform is quite the right platform for us to come on it and share with the Namibians, who are the owners of these companies, what we do and what is our responsibility. But possibly before I get to your question, on the turnaround strategy, there are people who may be asking that, what is this Namcor is all about? They may have heard about Namcor, but not fully conversant what we do. So Namcor is a national oil company. It was established in the early 90s, almost immediately after independence. And part of the responsibility and the mandate of Namcor is to do exploration, which is mainly oil and gas, and also to collect the necessary seismic data. These data, of course, when you collect them, they will help you to fully understand and have an appreciation of your geology in a country. That will be guiding you where possibly you could get some deposit of hydrocarbons, which is oil and gas. We are also responsible for security of supply. In other words, as we know that almost 80% of the production in a country depend on oil. The moment when you run dry as a country, your production will come to a standstill. So that is part of our responsibility as the national oil company to ensure a security of supply, particularly to our key apparatus of government. For instance, health. At any point in time, you don't want to see a situation whereby you don't have oil in the country and the health ministry or the hospitals, etc., they are negatively affected. Also at the same time, there are very sensitive part of government, for instance, like the police for security is very critical, the defense force is very critical. So at any point in time, you want to ensure that they are fully supplied. And that was, in fact, the mandate how Namcor was established, and that's what we do. Now, coming to your turnaround strategy. Now, turnaround strategy is something that is being introduced when a company has faced some kind of difficulties. As you may have read, and as you may have in the newspapers, etc., Namcor has really been going through a bit of a rough patch. And hence the word turnaround strategy. So the most difficult part that we have really encountered with Namcor, it was more on the financial challenges. I think the institution has been having significant debt, particularly to its creditors. And these creditors are mainly the suppliers of Namcor because we trade in oil. And as we know that Namibia does not produce oil or petroleum products, we need to import this from other nations where oil is found. And when we import this, so we trade it now with in the domestic economy to supply to the demand, to meet the domestic demand. And that's possibly where things have gone wrong. And hence Namcor found itself having a significant debt. And because of that debt, we needed some kind of support from government as a shareholder. And we really want to thank the Namibian government for its commitment that they came fully to support Namcor at that difficult time. They came up with a guarantee of about 1.2 billion, where it was a sovereign guarantee, and the money was provided by the commercial banks. That's the one that have provided the 1.2 billion. And the sovereign guarantee was provided by the Namibian government. So that has really enabled us somehow to stabilize the entity. It helped us to restructure part of our debt and almost to bring us back to the business because it almost really caused a situation whereby the creditors have had no trust anymore in Namcor. So hence, if they do not have trust, then they are not willing to trade with you, and that almost affected Namcor quite negatively. But we thank the government as a shareholder. They have really come fully on board, and they have supported us on that.
Wow, thank you so much for that broad explanation. Looking at the mandate of Namcor, just like you've explained it, it's really interesting to know that it's quite holistic, and it needs key players in the industry, obviously, like you just mentioned. But I would just like to know, so what specific changes were implemented to drive that transformation?
Very good. So when the company is facing some financial difficulties and also there are some governance lapses, you really need to come up with a very clear strategy on how you're going to go about that. I really need to thank the team that I found on the ground at Namcor, the executive, the staff of Namcor. I really need to thank them for what they have done to support the entity not to go down. That I only joined in January. And from the time that I have joined, I found quite a number of things that were put in place because this situation almost started early last year when it was really more or less established that the entity really needs some kind of turnaround strategy and support. And the team that was in charge really worked quite hard to come up with a recovery plan. And part of that recovery plan, first and foremost, was really to stabilize the entity and making sure that introduce some kind of efficiency measures to be able to ensure that where there has been unnecessarily expenses, those expenses are contained, and also streamline the processes, bring about policies that addressing some of the challenges that were found, because in many cases when you have got governance lapses, it requires that some of the policy needs to be updated or they needs to be strengthened so that whatever was done will no longer be possible because the policy is talking to those issues and is very clear. So those are some of the things that were really done by the team that I found on the ground. And when I came in January, we took it up there to continue strengthening the institution, making sure that all the policies are fully updated, making sure that we develop and document all the processes and create the awareness among the staff as well that this is how we need to do things. and also break the silos that were in various departments. For instance, you will find in the downstream, you have got sales and marketing, you have got also logistics and supply. Ordinarily, because they are in the same department, these were two separate departments, and they were working in silos. Now, sales and marketing, essentially, they get products that from supply and logistics, but if you do not coordinate these two departments and the functions in these two departments properly, you are likely to run into some problems. And those are some of the problems that has also affected the operations of Namcor.
Okay.
And what we have done to break those silos, we have consolidated those two departments into one. And with that consolidations and streamlining, that has really bring about some improved process and continuous improvement on what we have been doing. So certainly, I think that those are some of the major things that we have done.
Okay, thank you very much. Some of the things that you've mentioned, some of the issues that you found at the institution, I've seen that they are not very new to the industry. I mean, obviously, like you mentioned earlier, we've seen the newspaper articles that it's good to know that the things are being looked into to be aligned to the organization structure and also obviously strategy. But what I wanted to find out, you mentioned the 1.2 billion that you've received. I wanted to understand how has this impacted your relationship with the key partners?
So that debt of 1.2 billion that we needed to pay to our creditors, of course, that number does not really reflect the entire debt. That was just part of the debt, and we really need to pay that for us as an institution to come up to date. That 1.2 was almost covering the overdue debt.
Okay.
So we were at the situation whereby these creditors were almost taking us to liquidation. So if that action, government was not really fast enough to take that action to give a sovereign guarantee, at this point in time, possibly the creditors were going to take us to court, and Namcor was going to go under a hammer for liquidation. So that was really going to be quite disastrous for the country. And as I mentioned it already, that with that 1.2 billion, it allowed us to do financial restructuring. It also allowed us to negotiate with some of the suppliers to get better terms. As I mentioned, that when you import fuel, you more or less import it at BFP flat or BFP plus. BFP is what you call is a basic fuel price, because it's a regulated industry. You also do not have really a scope to put premiums as you wish, because you can only be allowed to put premiums within the scope of the regulations that you are given by the Ministry of Mines and Energy. So, and that's why operating in this industry, it really requires efficiency. For institutions like Namcor, if you compare to other international oil operators, these are operators that have really been operating in many other countries. They have fully established their systems in those countries. I have been talking to some of my colleagues with their farm tank, say like in Walvis Bay. When you have got a tank of about 20,000 liters, is being monitored electronically at any point in time. It's not only monitored in Namibia, but it's also monitored from other parts of the world, in, say, South Africa, etc. So that when that tank is dropping below a certain level, you can even get an alert from a different jurisdiction that, can you check your tank? Whereas Namcor now, we don't have that level of support like the other national oil entities. And that's why we really need to be quite, we really need to work very hard to put system into place. And that's what we are working on now, to ensure that there are systems in place, there are processes in place, so that at any point in time in our operation, we will be able to get real-time information. Because getting information after a month or getting information after a week, things has already happened. And it's going to be extremely difficult for you to be able to take actions when things has already happened. We are working on it so that we can be more proactive. We don't want to be reactionaries. We want to be proactive. Absolutely. Before anything happens, you prevent it.
You meditated. Looking at now that we're talking about the transformation, so what other financial steps is the organization looking at to ensure long-term sustainability?
As you know, that the country almost about 2-3 years back now, we have started discovering oil in the continental shelf of Namibia, the offshore. Almost since 1974, there has been exploration, and those exploration did not really yield results. The only exploration that yielded result, it was in 1974, where we discovered the Kutu gas. And then Kutu gas is still on now, is still on hold. Of course, the developers are trying to work on it to ensure that one day it see the light of the day, we start producing our own gas. But recently, around 2022, that's when we started now with exploration, the major oil companies coming into the country, and we started hitting some major discoveries in the offshore. I think as we speak, some of those discoveries now are going through the appraisal process, because in exploration, you start with exploration, then you move to appraisal, then you move to development, and then finally you move to production. So where we are now, we are at an appraisal stage in a number of blocks, of which Namcor is part of those blocks. I think in a number of those blocks where the exploration has been, discovery has been found, we are at 10%, we have got a 10% stake in those blocks. And that 10% stake is for the Namibian people. So if production starts, definitely that 10% will start generating significant revenue proceeds to Namcor and to the Namibian government and to Namibia as a whole. Of course, we know that we are not happy entirely with the 10%. And this is quite, discovery and exploration is quite an expensive exercise. Imagine just to drill one well, it costs you about $100 million US. So if you translate that into Nam dollar, is about 1.8 billion. And you are not sure whether you will get oil, hydrocarbons or not. Sometimes it will be dry. So that will be like 1.8 billion that you have just thrown into the water. And that's why when we are looking for a stake, of course, we can take a stake of 80% in a block or even 100%. But as an entity, if we do not have sufficient resources and our pocket is not deep enough, we will not be able to explore. We will be sitting with blocks where Namcor has got 100% or 80%. And those blocks will be unexplored because you need that money that I stated. So for you to be able now to start with serious exploration, that's why the international oil companies are coming on board. And as Namcor, we say that we have got an interest of 80% in that block, but we will farm down. In other words, we want to reduce our stake so that you can come in because you have got resources, and then you can help us to do the exploration. If we had money on our own, we were going to do that exploration. First, I think our limitation at this point in time, oil and gas is entirely something new. We do not have money on our own. We also do not have the necessary expertise. And that's why the major international oil companies are needed to support us in that endeavor.
Okay. You mentioned something very interesting because there's always this conversation about oil and gas. And I think that most Namibians, including myself, I also didn't understand it in terms of where are we as a country with regards to oil and gas. Are we producing the oil? You've just explained to say that at what stage we are as a country. And I think it's very important that you've just highlighted that to give us context in terms of why do we only have 10% stake? Why are we only at this specific stage? And I think that gave really a lot of clarity in terms of where Namcor is going as an institution, and also what is the prospects of Namibians in terms of oil and gas. Thank you so much for that. I really wanted to just highlight that. You also mentioned the integration of the marketing, the sales, the logistics, and the supply chain departments, and they became into one. Now, they are now one as we speak, right? So has that improved the efficiency, the operational efficiency to some extent?
Definitely, with that kind of integration, we break the silos that was taking place. Let me just give you a very simple example how silos can affect operations. Supply and logistics, for instance, in the downstream are responsible for ordering the petroleum products into the country. Now, when you order that, those products, they must come by a vessel at the port of Walvis Bay. Now, if you order a vessel of about, say, 25 million liters that is meant for Namcor, first and foremost, you need to make sure that you have got sufficient capacity, or what you call is ullage, at your farm tank to be able to offload that 25 million liters immediately. Now, at that point, sales and marketing should be able to push the sales so that by the time that the vessel comes, there is sufficient capacity in a farm tank to offload the 25 million liters that you have brought. Now, if there is no proper coordination between these two functions or these two departments, then the vessel will come with your 25 million on board. And you have got possibly only a capacity to accommodate 10 million. So the vessel will come and discharge only the 10 million and wait for you to create the capacity for the 15 million that is on board. That must be discharged. Now, in that case, if the vessel is waiting, you almost pay an amount of, say, $300 a day for waiting. So the vessel can wait for 10 days, and then say like 10 days times 300, that will be almost $3 million. So, and that is almost taking off, creaming off your profit. And that's why the efficiency in this industry is very crucial, and coordination must really be done properly. Given, as I have stated, that is a regulated industry. You don't have the luxury of introducing premiums to be able to make exorbitant profits. You are given only the guidelines that you can only operate in these margins of profits. So in that case, I think that's why coordination and breaking silos will help you quite a great deal to bring about effectiveness and efficiency in our operations. And essentially, that's what we have experienced. I think over the last couple of months, since January, we have really avoided the demarriages. Whereas in the past, demarriages were almost occurrence that were taking place more frequently. But with that adjustment, I think demarriages almost has been reduced to close to zero.
Okay, wow, that's actually very good to know. You've also just shared that you've saved basically 22 million as a cost saving initiative this year. How did you manage this? So
what we did with our budgeting at the beginning of this year, we we sat with a team, calling all different departments to make their budget presentations. First and foremost, I think when you want to contain expenses, it starts with planning. And so that's what we did. We allowed departments to come, do their various presentations, ask questions, did a lot of interrogations on those budgets. So we did quite a significant cut from their request. As you know, that with a budget practice, department has got always a lot of things to present. And after discussion, all of them, they will realize that, oh, this was not really necessary. I think we could live without it. So I think a lot of savings came out of that, us working very hard, understanding the financial situation of Namcor, to make sure that we spend at the minimum. I should really be thankful to our employees that they have really been able to fully understand and appreciate the condition, the financial position of our company. Almost over the last 3-4 years, they have not received an increment. And one really wants to express an appreciation for our employee to endure for that. As we know that the cost of living is it's high, is almost increasing. But they have been able to live without any increment. I think that alone, I should really express a word of appreciation to our employees and for their understanding.
So with regards to the savings, what areas were targeted?
The areas that were targeted essentially for us to be able to realize that savings is on traveling. I think we have really cut a lot of traveling. We have also introduced, when you go to a hotel, for the first time when I was given the task, so I was booked into a hotel, and that was not far, it was in Walvis Bay. Then I came into that place, I looked at the room, and then I said that no, next time I'm not going to stay here. I don't need this big room. I need something small. So from my subsequent traveling, so I came to introduce, to say that next time book me in a small room where I was even paying possibly half of what I paid for the first time. And that I introduced it almost to everyone. So it's hard time. We need to live with that. There have been a few complaints here and there that our budget is too low for accommodation. I said that, but at this point in time, let us endure with that. Because taxpayers have helped us with 1.2 billion. From our side as employees, we cannot live into luxury, or we should simply just try to live within our means and demonstrate our commitment that really we want to make sure that Namcor move in the right direction. And it's only that can only be done when the discipline starts at home.
Absolutely.
And we are the people who have to drive that.
Absolutely.
And also not only do it, but also not only talk about it, but also for us to do it so that others can follow.
Wow, I'm so inspired. How do you plan to maintain this level of efficiency? And also, you've actually answered the question where I wanted to know about the resistance, but more so, I wanted to understand, how did you get the employees to the buy-in? How did you get them on board with that?
The issue of buy-in, of course, is a difficult issue. Yes. I think we cannot really claim that it's entirely under control. Of course, the employees, they keep on knocking on your door that we need an increment and this and that. But of course, with an engagement, we are mature people, we engage, we exchange information, we are very transparent. We have got more regular meetings to share whatever information that we have as management with the employees. One thing, when I joined Namcor, what I have spoken to my colleagues in corporate communication is to say that we need to be very transparent with information. And transparency of information helps to create information asymmetry. The moment when you have got some people who have got information, they start speculating with that information, and they spin that information to their own benefit. So what we did is we said that at any point in time when we have got information, equalize the information to everyone. And we could see that by doing so, we could see the fruits of doing that, giving information to all the people at the same time. You will not find people now getting into a particular corners whispering about a gossip or something that is happening, because all of you were in the same meeting, you were provided with the same information. So there will not be any need for you to start speculating with that information.
Sure.
Because you have got exactly the same information. And I realize that it really helps us.
As a communication specialist myself, I totally agree with you. I totally agree. That is really the way to do. You need to level the information ground, and everybody feels included. Yes, thank you very much for that. Can you just also provide us more details with regards to the farm out agreement with Chevron on the Walvis Bay Basin? What does that entail?
So, as I have just indicated, a lot of the potential of the deposit of hydrocarbon in Namibia are offshore. So we have got 3 basins. We have got Orange Basin, which is on the southern part of our Atlantic Ocean. We have got Walvis Bay Basin, which is almost in the middle. We have got also the Okunene Basin. So the farm out with Chevron, as we know that Chevron is one of the international oil major. Again, when some of those players get into the country, that speaks volume that the country, they see things that other people ordinarily do not see. Because before they even undertake to come into a particular jurisdiction, they will first have access to the seismic data, because with each and every exploration, we get data from that is kept by Namcor. That's the data for the entire country, but Namcor, we are the custodian of that. So they do the analysis on those data, and then they realize that where do they need to go to do the exploration. So them now, we had a block, PEL 82, where we farm out to Chevron. At the beginning of this year, in April, we farmed down our position. We are only now a holder of 10% working interest in that block. Chevron is holding 80%. So soon, I think they will be doing drilling in that area, so which we are confident that they are likely to get some deposit of hydrocarbons. Okay. And again, I think we have got also some kind of drillings as well that are taking place in Okavango Basin. So that's onshore now. So there could also be a prospects of Namibia having hydrocarbons both offshore and onshore. So far in the country where we have got the drilling is in the Okavango Basin. Okay. I think close to, it must be in Okavango East. Okavango East. That's where the drilling is taking place.
Okay. So what are some of the anticipated benefits for Namcor and obviously Namibia as a country?
So now with oil, we have seen how oil can transform economies and how oil can transform countries. A typical example, we see it in the Middle East. How countries like Saudi Arabia have transformed themselves. They were just desert countries, and with oil, they managed to transform themselves. And also, if you look into the United Arab Emirates, where you have got Dubai, you have got Abu Dhabi, so those countries have, their economies are completely at a different level. If you look at the cost of living in those countries or the livelihood of people are somehow completely transformed compared to about 20 years ago. And that is as a result of them using the oil proceeds efficiently and effectively for the advancement of their people. we have got that strong conviction that with oil proceeds coming to Namibia, the livelihood of Namibians will be changed, will be transformed. People should not start asking us that, say that we start pumping oil, in 2 years, then they will say that, but where is the money? I think it takes some time. So for us really to be able to enjoy this benefit, it may take about 5 to 10 years.
Okay.
So we need to just to be patient. So what we need to make sure, I think from our side as Namcor and also as government entirely, is to make sure that these oil proceeds are used for the development of the country. And one should really thank the Namibian government for the foresight. You remember, I think it should be 3 years back, we launched what we call is a sovereign wealth fund. Sovereign wealth fund was launched in anticipation of saying that Namibia is a country that is endowed with natural resources. By that time, there was no oil discovery. We were talking about things like diamonds. So the thinking at that point in time was that, look, we have got diamonds, but diamonds are not forever. We have got uraniums. Uraniums are not forever. These are non-renewable resources. Now, in 30 years to come, or 50 years to come, our children, our great-great-grandchildren are going to talk about diamonds. That our country, at one point, we hear that there were diamonds in the country. And when they look around, they should really feel that this country, in 50 years back, was endowed with this kind of resources. But if they do not see the diamond itself, they should see something more tangible that can really prove that our country had some level of resources. And that's why government came up with that sovereign wealth fund, so that even if diamonds are not there, there will be a fund where proceeds from the investment of that fund could be taken to invest into development. For instance, building hospital. That is not 20 years to come or 30 years to come. To build things for that generation. Because the plan was, you need to make sure that the resources are not only benefiting the current generation, but also we postpone it to benefit the next generation. And I think with that sovereign wealth fund and with oil discovery now, and if we start production, a lot of those oil proceeds will be channeled into the sovereign wealth fund to preserve it for the next generation. Of course, while we are also ensuring that the current generation also get the benefit of it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that explanation. Namcor has been focusing on a lot of upstream exploration activities. What role does the upstream, with regards to the partnerships, what role, like the one with Chevron, for example, what role does it have with regards to Namcor's long-term strategy in terms of that collaboration, that plan, and that alignment? Really, what is it?
So, as I indicated, that Namcor mandate is to coordinate and do exploration and also collect the necessary data, as well as ensuring the security of supply. The security of supply is more on the downstream, and the collection of data and exploration, that's what we call is an upstream. So where we see ourselves as Namcor, at the moment, as I have just indicated, due to the higher cost that will be required to do exploration, Namcor is only holding 10%. But our vision as a country, as an organization, say in 15 years to come, we want to see Namcor to become an active operator. So far, we are only passive. First and foremost, because of what I cited, that we do not have sufficient resources to do this exploration on our own. Secondly, we do not have also the necessary critical skills that we will need to do this exploration on our own. But in our vision, in 15 years to come, we should be able to become an active operator. We should become a global energy company that has got a world-class standard. So that's how we see ourselves. And Namcor, at one point, by that time, we will not be there. Others who will come after us will be there to execute that. We want to see Namcor becoming an active operator, doing the operation themselves, doing operation, and also going through all the necessary stages until production. So, and by that time, we should not only be speaking about Namcor having 10%. In some of the block, Namcor possibly should be holding 80%, because some of the oil proceeds that you will be getting is always is good to reinvest.
Absolutely.
And sometimes when we are running these entities for the government and for the country, we should more or less run them the same way we are running our own affairs at home.
Absolutely.
Because when we come to running our own finances at home, we are so prudent. But when it comes sometimes to running government affairs, it's laissez-faire. We just want to say, we will just do the minimum. Government is us. And the few of us who are selected to serve in this government entity, we should count it as a privilege. And that privilege, we can only show it by demonstrating that we are not there for ourselves. We are there representing millions and thousands of people who ordinarily should have also come on the table. But everybody cannot be on the table. It should only be few. But we are representing them. And as we are representing them, we should do the right thing so that in 10 years to come, 5 years to come, they will benefit from what we are doing and what as leadership, what we are preparing for them.
Absolutely. No truer words have been said. Any final remarks that you'd like to share with our viewers, Mr. Onguta?
So my final remark, I think, on this is to say, as a nation, let us continue to support Namcor. Again, as I have just stated, that we are not yet out of the wood. The debt that we had, it's quite big. We also need further support moving forward. As I said, that we got that support of sovereign guarantee of 1.2 billion. But the key thing is that we need to look at the bigger price. The bigger price is for us as a nation to participate fully in an upstream industry, where, as I have just spelled out that vision, that we need to be an operator one day. And we also need to be 80%, having 80% working interest in some of those blocks, because the moment when you do so, it will become highly profitable for the country. But in the next 12 to 18 months, our journey that we have undertaken to transform and to reform, we still need support. We may cry back to our shareholders and also to the Namibian people at large. That is an institution. We still need further support for us really to be able to prepare the entity for that greater promise that we see in years to come.
Wow. Thank you very much. There you go, Namibia. As you heard today, rightfully heard today, the Namcor is committed to maintaining its efficiency levels and also improving it. Listening to this information shared today, it is really worthy to note that Namcor is committed to its development and also to the Namibian people. Mr. Onguta, I would just like to thank you very, 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 very much for coming in today and for sharing this relevant information. I think we've all learned something today, especially with regards to the oil industry. Thank you so much, and thank you so much for being here as well.
Thank you very much, Twafi. I think this was a very good discussion, and I also want to thank the listeners as well for having taken their time to listen to us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. From me, Twafi Shafombabi, it's goodbye for now. From all of us here at the GIC, it's well bye.